Hey, how's it going? This is Kevin from Audio Digital. I'm here with another video, and this time we got ourselves some sweet phase plant up in here. What we're doing here is doing a kind of a review. When this first came out, I was very intrigued because I'm a synth head. I love synthesizers. And I love the idea that you could easily do audio rate modulation among oscillators. That means you can do phase modulation, frequency modulation, all kinds of good stuff like that. And I've always been a big fan of that. So when it came out, I was like, I might have to get me some of this. However, I decided not to at the time when it came out for a couple of different reasons. One is that I already have Bitwig, and Bitwig allows me to do most of the things I can do in phase plant, and I didn't have to pay, I believe it was like 190 or 180 bucks or something like that. That didn't sit too well with me. And when I saw that it lacked a few other features that I might have wanted, I was just kind of like, nah, I'm good. And then they came along with version 2, and they have an introductory price of $99. And for one particular reason, which I'll get into in a minute, I was like, I think I'm going to go ahead and have to pull the trigger on this guy. And so here it is. And I've been playing with it. And yeah, I'm going to give you some of my impressions and kind of do a bit of a review. I haven't had it for that long, only like, it's been a week or something, maybe less than a week. So it may not be as in-depth, but I think I have a few perspectives, especially if you're trying to justify purchasing it. Hopefully I can give you some perspective on what that's going to look like in your setup and if it's going to be worth it for you. So let's get into this. So let's look at the overall interface of Phase Plant. I think they really spent a lot of time trying to make this wonderful to work with, and it does pay off. As soon as I play some notes, you can see a lot of stuff going on. You get a sense of what's happening. It's not perfect in that regard as far as you can get a little lost, especially when things start to scroll down the edge here. But they have made it very graphically pleasing. I love the way you can see what's going on when you modulate things in this view of the waveform. I can't really understate how beautiful that is, how much that makes it a joy to work with a phase plant. The next thing to note about the interface is that it's all one page. There's a few instances where you can have a pop-up where you're editing something, but in most cases, everything's going to be right in your face. And I think it's generally a plus. I feel that there's no problem with having a tab. When I first opened it up, I was looking for some global settings. Like if I look at something like Vital here, you got your advanced settings where you can set oversampling. You can look at different displays. You can, change how it's going to handle notes and so forth. But to be fair to Phase Plant here, this is like, I think maybe the only synth that was just like MPE compatible right out of the box, which I think makes a lot of sense. If I use my MP controller over here, it just worked. I didn't have to adjust anything. Most synths I use, I have to do some adjusting and adjust some parameters, but I didn't need to go into any menu and turn on MPE. Like, duh, like I shouldn't ever have to do that anyway. The fact that there is not a lot of global controls maybe just mean that they designed this really well and you don't need to. It's just going to work. They've added also functions where you can see they draw a line between the modulation source and destination. That's pretty good. I think it is better to have a dedicated page where you can see all your modulation. Go back to Vital again. You can really quickly, modulate something and change the modulation source, but then you can also go to the matrix and see everything and adjust a mod map right from here, which I think maybe that's a little bit of a better type of workflow. There's no problem having pages, I don't think. But it's hard to imagine how they could have done a better job. It's thought up from the ground up to be excellent and easy, and I applaud them for what they've been able to achieve here. So all that said, it's pretty simple here. We have three sections. We got our generator section, our modulator section, and our effects section. The generator section is pretty impressive, and this is where you can do the famous audio rate modulation. If you're not familiar with what that means exactly, I'll show you really quickly. We have an analog oscillator here, and I'm going to go ahead and create another one. And what I can do is I can take this little green plus here, click on it, and then I can modulate some of these parameters for another oscillator, or even itself. It can actually modulate itself, which is a feedback loop. So if I want to do FM, or actually what is technically phase modulation, I can simply turn this up here, click and drag, and I can see instantly that this is being modulated. In most cases, and in fact, when you're using one of these modulators, it doesn't update fast enough for you to send like a 1K signal and modulate something else with something that moves that fast. It's going to, I'm not sure what the rate is for these modulators. Maybe it's like 1K. I don't know for sure. It's not going to be like 48 kilohertz or something like that. It's going to be a lower amount, because generally if you're just moving knobs, in most cases, you don't need that high resolution. However, of course, you do need it if you're doing phase modulation and things like that. So this thing can do FM, it can do linear FM, it can do amplitude modulation, and all kinds of crazy stuff. Anything that's in this box here can be modulated with an oscillator at audio rates. So we can even do it with some of the other things you can find in here, such as, let's put in one of these filters with this oscillator as well. If I turn this off. So you can do kind of interesting things with that. And it shows you what's going to happen to it from the display there, which I find really satisfying. That's fun stuff. So anyway, the sound design possibilities there are pretty crazy. So the other oscillators we have here is a noise oscillator. We have several different types of noise here that we can choose from. Pretty standard stuff. We also have the wavetable here with a nice library of wavetables that we can choose from. Now, one thing about the wavetable that is a little bit maybe disappointing is that it doesn't have any bend modes like you would find in Serum or in Vital. It's just pretty much a straightforward system, although again, you can do modulation between oscillators, but you can't do kind of bend plus and minus modes and formant and stuff like that from here very easily, at least. So that's something, you know, I guess you have this band limit thing here. It's a little bit disappointing. What is awesome though about these oscillators is the unison. There's a lot of different unison modes that you can use. It tends to sound pretty awesome, and you can even do frequency stack and pitch stack and minor sevenths. So yeah, that's fun stuff right there. The filter is pretty good. There's only one filter here in the generator section, although you can put, of course, filters. There's about, what, 2 or 3 more that you can put in the effects section. The thing I think is lacking here that I wish they would have is key tracking. Now, of course, you can do key tracking, but you have to go in here and open up a note modulator and then modulate this like that. And that's not hugely a problem, but in a lot of cases, like in Bitwig or Vital or something like that, you can just turn on key tracking. In fact, usually it's on by default, and then you have to adjust the knob to turn it off. And I think that's generally the way most people want it to work. The filter, I think it sounds pretty great. You can change the different modes, and then you have a pole slider that goes all the way up to 6 poles. That's pretty good. I kind of like that. You know, there's synths that have a lot of different filter types and stuff, and that's pretty great. But I like how things are consolidated here, where you have all your poles switchable right here, and it's just real easy to use and easy to get the results you want. The sampler pretty much as bare bones as it can possibly be. It doesn't do any multi-samples or anything like that. I think that not having any multi-samples is pretty bad. I mean, it would be so much more powerful if this was a much more robust sampler. If I look at, of course, like the poly grid here, we have an entire sampler that you can just drop into the environment and do basically anything you want that supports multi-samples and everything. So if I try to compare it to this, it's just like, you know, the grid wins hands down. But it's definitely better than having nothing here. And it can do some pretty interesting tricks because the start and end times are modulatable. So we can turn on looping and actually change the start and end times in real time for the loop. So that's really a nice feature. So the modulator section here is pretty great as well. We have envelope, we have an LFO, and then we have a LFO table, which is pretty awesome. And we have the curve and the random. So these can pretty much get anything you need done. The envelope here is pretty basic. Just attack, decay, sustain, release, hold, and delay. But we have some really cool LFOs. This one you can edit and add breakpoints and stuff. So fully editable, customizable LFO. This is an LFO table. So, I mean, come on, that's crazy. You can actually morph the LFO over time, and they've made some really cool LFO tables here. Look at the way that thing dances. It's so cool. This is actually very musical and useful. Now, something like in Bitwig here, you can do that because you have the oscillator or the wavetable oscillator that you can take down to whatever speed you want, and then you can morph and so forth. And I guess the only difference is that maybe you don't think to use it for that. You totally can, but it really does make a difference when it's right there in your face and it's like, hey, use me. I do this. I'm for this, you know? And they've also stocked it with a bunch of very relevant LFO tables. So yeah, I think that was a brilliant move. Now we have the curve, which makes, as far as I can tell, the LFO kind of redundant. Maybe it should be deprecated. But they seem to do the same things, basically. It's just that the curve also gives you this loop section that you can use. So I guess going forward, I would probably just use the curve for everything. And you have these different modes. So it's kind of like a multi-stage envelope. Now, what I guess I don't like is that if you want to edit any of this, I guess you can edit these points from here, but you can't add any points or change the way these points are. From here, you have to go into the edit page. So that's, maybe not the most ideal, but they make it pretty easy for you to edit. So I like it. I can work with it. And the random is random generator. It works great. I'm not going to super go into it, I guess, at this point. Now, what I do want to talk about, though, is the fact that these all have re-triggers, and I think that is a new feature in 2.0. That's really a good idea. I'm surprised like everyone isn't doing that, because that is so useful, to be able to re-trigger these things in regular intervals. Opens up a lot of cool doors, and you can use one of these to trigger the other. So if I want to re-trigger this curve at random intervals, I can just click on this and connect it to there. And then it's just going to trigger, I think, every time it goes past 0.5, I'm going to think, something like that. Yep, it triggered just now. And then it untriggers when it drops below that point. Come on. It's so simple, yet so wonderful. Now that's something, of course, you can do in the grid all day, but to just put it in a synth here and make it like so accessible. Yeah, these guys are thinking. They're using their minds here. I like this. Okay, so let's get to one of my favorite parts here, the effects. One of my favorite features of the synthesizer is the fact that you can make per note effects out of like any of the effects that you can put within the synth here, which is a pretty extensive list of effects. You see all these are here. Now, when this first came out, I think, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons that I didn't buy it at the time is that it only came with a few of these, and then you had to buy the rest of them separately, and there was like tiers and stuff. And at a certain point, I was just like, man, this is too much money. It's too expensive. And I don't like the kind of idea that it's piecemealed out, So I wasn't feeling it. Now, though, not only do you get all these effects with the phase plant package, you can get all these effects for free, along with Snap Heap, which is like this kind of serial parallel container thing for all these effects. You can get that for free. So if you didn't know, now you know. Like, the fact that they're giving away these plugins for free along with Snap Heap, really, it makes me like the company more, basically. So I think that's a pretty big deal. So anyway, this effects section, best feature is this little button right here, the poly button. This means that this lane is going to be processed polyphonically, and it means that there will be an individual copy of it for each note that you play. Now, that may not sound amazing on the onset, but it is. Trust me. Now, let me show you why it's amazing. So it means that any of these can be used per note. So for something like the phase distortion here, we can actually use it in a way where it's not going to just be a bunch of crazy noise. And if we play a chord using this oscillator here into this phase distortion, sounds like garbage. But if I hit this button, all of a sudden it just adds color. And I can use this phase distortion to greatly increase the timbre range I can produce from the oscillator. So in some sense, it almost makes up for the fact that there's no bend controls going on with the wavetable, as there are in a lot of other packages. Now, unfortunately, though, because of the way this is going to be routed, if I'm going to also use some unison, it's not going to sound very clean. I'm going to get beating and stuff like that, like you hear. If this processing was being done within the oscillator, then it would sound totally smooth. That's a little bit of a downside. Now, one way I can get around that, once again, turn off unison here and turn on unison down here, global unison. Now everything is coherent and smooth once again. Turn this one on again. This one. So in any case, that is kind of a workaround, but if you look over here, you can see that uses a pretty hefty amount of CPU. So, what are you going to do? Anyway, but this is still really a great feature because there's a lot of these that I can use. I can use some of these filters. If I don't like the one filter that they give me for the generation section, I can use one of these filters from here, like this non-linear filter. And I absolutely love that's available. Another amazing thing is that you can use snap heat or multipass to layer together a bunch of effects. So I can come into this snap heap interface and I can add a bit crusher. And then in parallel, I can do this Haas or whatever. And then on the outside here, I can turn this off or on, change the gain. Very clean and easy. So any sort of routing here is now possible because I can use these different kind of containers within the synthesizer. Now, of course, this is something you can also quite easily do in Bitwig in the effects section of any of the, pretty much any of the things here. You can add effects and then you can layer them and chain them and all that kind of stuff. But it is kind of, there's something pleasing about looking at it in this one interface and being able to adjust it fairly easily. So the factory library is very nice. Of course, you're not going to find a lot of good acoustics, instruments, or anything like that. So this isn't an all-in-one sort of Omega synth that can cover every possible need you might have. It is specifically and very intentionally focused towards electronic music. Creative stuff. I think they took some time and energy to get some sound design down, get some good sound desires here. And the MP out of the box is really nice. Pleased. Color me pleased. Another thing that I think is a little bit lacking in it is there's no arpeggiator. So the simplicity is helpful, but it seems like maybe an arpeggiator would have been better. That's something that most synths will do these days. A lot of them will, at least. So yeah, I love the sounds too. I think the sounds are very clean and interesting. And they keep me inspired, so I like it. But one thing I find a little bit disturbing, I don't know if we call it disturbing, is that along with the effects here, they have some effects that don't come with phase plan itself. So you get most of the plugins along with phase plant, and then they keep a few back for themselves that you have to pay extra for. It's a little insane because the price to get the ones that are grayed out here is, I think, like $250, and then I got this on sale for $99, so it's like way more just to get those last few effects. It's a hard sell for me. I don't think I'm going to do that. And some of these presets include the effects that don't come with phase plant. They work in here, but you just can't edit them. I'm trying to find one where they're using it, and let me see. I know that like the first two I even tried to look at here were using them. So yeah, I think this one definitely does. Yeah, so it's like no license, but you still, I mean, that's a really good sounding bass. But then they're like, no, you can't touch this. I don't know, man. I don't like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to judge these guys. They need to make their monies and they need to feed their kids and stuff like that. But it feels like an ad right in my synth. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So I like the sound, and now like it's just kind of, it feels like they're really wanting me to get these extra plugins, and they're being a little sneaky. But if they gave it to me like the rest of them for a really cheap price, then I'd feel like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Anyway, just something to think about there. I guess as far as value proposition goes, especially if you own Bitwig or something close to it. I don't know if there's a lot close to Bitwig actually, but it was a hard sell at 180, and I guess after the sell is over, it's going to go all the way up to 199. I would not buy it for that because I have Bitwig and I have the grid and so forth. It's fun. I like the way it sounds, but pretty much everything in here I can do in Bitwig as well. There's a few things that you can't do. You can use a frequency shifter polyphonically in phase plant. I can't do that unless I build one in a grid. I can't do that anywhere in Bitwig. But if you're having to pay $200, you know, I don't know. At 99 bucks though, I kind of recommend it. And the one reason that I got it was the fact that you have the wavetable editor, and there is no wavetable editor in Bitwig natively. There is one in Vital, which is free, but I like this one better. I think it offers an easier workflow, and it has a lot of great features, and you can hear your results in real time. You can do some of those things in Vital, but I think Serum still is probably the best wavetable workshop that I'm aware of, at least in a synthesizer. So at 99 bucks with what you are getting here, I think it's probably something that you will appreciate getting your hands on. I'm going to have to give it a thumbs up and a tentative, perhaps thumbs up, depending on your situation when it goes up to full price. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you have any questions. Leave them in the comments. If you have any thing you want to ask or just statements you want to make, please join into the conversation. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to go ahead and click the like button if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe if you would like to have more content like this on your plate, hopefully on a regular basis. As for now, thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.